Welcome to the new liturgical year 2024-2025 and the season of Advent. Today is Thursday, December the 5th, 2024, and it marks the first week of Advent. This is the Manna at the Tap podcast provided by Tapestry Ministries, and in it we actively seek the spiritual nourishment our souls crave. We explore one of the daily lectionary readings designed to be the manna, the food that feeds and nourishes our spiritual growth and provide the sustenance our souls need. I'm Gloria, a fellow traveler on this spiritual journey, and together we share insights and interpretations from these readings that enrich our spiritual lives. The lectionary text is Luke chapter 1, verses 68 to 79. It's a long chapter. It is the Song of Zechariah, one of the two musical selections in Luke chapter 1. But first, let's look at Zechariah. He was an aged priest married to Elizabeth, a relative of Mary. The couple were childless, and one day, as Zechariah was serving as a priest before the Lord, the angel Gabriel appeared at his side. When Zechariah saw the angel, he was terrified and overcome by fear. But the angel told him not to be afraid because God had heard the couple's prayer and the time was right for Elizabeth to have a child. This child would fulfill the word promised by the prophet Malachi. Zechariah was skeptical about the angel's words, reminding the angel that he was old and that Elizabeth was beyond having a child. One does not mess with the angel Gabriel because his job is to deliver God's message to humanity, and the message is clear. The child was to be named John. There would be joy and delight all around at his birth. He would be great in the Lord's sight, and he would be filled with the Holy Spirit while still in his mother's womb. The angel Gabriel responded to Zechariah's skepticism by pointing the clicker and hitting the mute button, adding that Zechariah would only be able to speak after all that he said would happen. Now we move to the lectionary text. As the angel said, the child is born and named John. At that moment, the mute button is released and Zechariah is filled with the Holy Spirit and sings this psalm of praise. This was indeed a Holy Spirit event, a movement of God's Holy Spirit breaking into the ordinary, mundane world, bringing God's promise from the past into his yet to be promised future. In the past, the prophet Joel had said that God would pour out his spirit on everyone, and that included the old man Zechariah and the old woman Elizabeth, his wife, as she responded to the young woman Mary's song, and the yet to be born baby John burst into kicks of celebration in his mother's belly as he was filled with the Holy Spirit. This song of praise recalls God's promises to David and even goes far back to when God swore an oath to their ancestor Abraham. The song begins with a statement of praise: "Blessed is the Lord." And the reason for the praise is given in verses 68b to 74. God has provided redemption for his people and deliverance from their enemies. God's people can continue living in a covenant relationship with him and witness his work in history because of how he dealt mercifully with their ancestors. He visited his people to interrupt their misery and lack, restoring and sustaining them. He redeemed them with a horn of salvation. Now, in ancient Israel, the horn signified a show of military strength. Zechariah's song alludes to Hannah's song, which we find in 2 Samuel chapter 2, when she speaks of God's ability to reverse fortunes and bring about unexpected outcomes for those who live for God. Zacharias' song concludes with a formula for praise. And the praise begins with the Exodus as they traveled into the monarchy, across the prophetic words, and into the hope for a new promise fulfilled through the birth of John the Baptist and later through Jesus. As we continue the journey through the end of the first week of Advent, this is the week of hope. We are grateful for the silence Zechariah experienced because he used that time to create a song fitting for John, his son. So long after Zachariah and Elizabeth slept with their ancestors, John would be able to remember that he was the child spoken of in the song written by his father, and he was called to prepare the way for Jesus, giving the people the knowledge of salvation through the forgiveness of their sins. God's tender mercy broke into the darkness of this world as the first Christmas morning dawned. The light of God still shines in the darkness, but the darkness cannot overcome the light. And in anticipation of the second week of Advent, our feet are being guided on the pathway towards peace.